Hello everyone, and welcome to the August webcast on the Agile Central community. My name is Stephen Black, and I work in product marketing for Agile Central. With me here today is Rusty Lloyd, a principal of Agile Management. He will be presenting on CA Agile Central's capacity planning capabilities, as well as how you can combine those with the plan progression feature to accurately predict and track changes over your releases. For those of you who are new to this webcast series, these webcasts typically consist of a presentation and a general conversation given by someone from our customer success, product management, pre-sales, or education team on how to better use or use various features and functionalities within Agile Central. These presentations are designed for Agile Central users just like you. We encourage questions and answers, so please feel free to submit your questions in the panel in the WebEx screen on the right. We will go over these just after the presentation. Just a reminder that this webcast will be recorded and the replay will be available on the Agile Central community for you to watch at a later time, or maybe even share with a colleague. I'll now hand it over to Rusty.
All right, thank you, sir, and welcome everybody to this webinar on capacity planning and plan progression. Just a little bit about me. I'm a director in pre-sales in the Agile Management Business Unit, and one of the things I really like doing is talking to customers about Agile pretty much in any form, because I feel like I always learn something new when I talk to customers and help push my understanding of Agile and Agile transformations, and of course, by extension, Agile Central. So we're going to spend a few minutes today talking about a couple of things. We're going to discuss planning and resource allocation and why these things are important. We're also going to take a look at capacity planning, take a look at plan progression, and then do a very brief demo. We're then going to open it up for Q&A, and I will make you the promise that I don't believe I know every answer, but I certainly believe I can find out answers to your questions. So please don't be shy, and please feel free to ask questions. With that, I know that there are 3 words on the screen, and some of you have opinions on them, but we're going to kind of see if you can look past these buzzwords and kind of understand what we mean when we talk about planning and when we talk about allocation of resources. When we talk about planning, we're really looking at alignment. And when I say alignment, I mean, how do we align what our business is interested in, what they want to make sure that happens, to the work that actually has to be done in order to make it happen. Really, what we want to do is to make sure that we are collaborating, not just collaborating with the people that are actually doing the work in the Agile teams, but also to the business themselves, to the various stakeholders in management, to help understand what needs to be done and have a clear view of how it's going to get done. And also, when we talk about how it's going to get done, understanding the higher levels in terms of what is important to the business to make sure that the right work gets done. That cannot happen without collaboration. That cannot happen without people getting together and understanding what the issues are and how to resolve them. That leads us into talking about obstacles that get in our way. Making sure that we identify those risks, making sure that those dependencies and impediments not only are defined but understood and solved. Right? This isn't going to happen, of course, overnight. Some things are going to be harder to resolve than others, but knowledge is very powerful because knowledge will allow you to get the resources that you need to do things or to defer things. In essence, what we are doing is we're understanding what demand there is and also understanding the capacity that we have to match that demand. Right? We need to understand, again, what we have on our plates and how we're going to make sure that gets done based on the size of our plate or based on the things that we know that are going to happen that may hinder us or may help us. All of this leads to one big fact. If we're looking across teams and we're understanding how we're going to get work to those teams via scaling Agile, this is essential. Planning is essential to make all of this happen. The mechanism that we choose to do that is via big room planning. And so all of these things that I have been talking about for the last few minutes are going to lead us to make sure that we leverage big room planning to help us understand what's important to the business, how that's going to filter down to the teams, what work is going to be required to get everything done, and making sure that we can actually get it done in that release or that PI timeframe. Hand in hand with that is the notion of capacity, or in full transparency, when I say resource allocation, I know some of you on the webinar gasped a little bit, and I know in some of the feedback I got even before the webinar, we had a great discussion about people are not resources. But it's also very true that you need to understand how much capacity you have in order to make sure that your work needs to get done. You need to know how much work your team can get done. You need to understand where your resources are. And while we don't look at people as resources, it is true that we can look at teams as resources. If you are trying to look at how you're bringing your teams from waterfall to Agile, those waterfall teams will talk in terms of resources. And part of the way that you make sure that you evolve them to making sure that they're really optimizing utilization and optimizing lead time is by making sure that you give them a good transition from terminology that they understand into the right terminology, especially as it relates to Agile. The key thing here, again, is around alignment and making sure that you put the information in the hands of everybody to make sure that they get their job done most efficiently. And with that, I will point, of course, back to big room planning. All of this is going to help you facilitate big room planning, facilitating getting everyone in a room and making sure that you have the visibility and you understand how the work is going to get allocated. When we talk about capacity planning, we're really talking about empowering you with what-if scenarios. This is going to make sure that you understand what capabilities you have in your release and or your PI. I am using those terms interchangeably for those of you who are leveraging SAFe. But really making sure that you have the data at your fingertips so you can have those conversations to plan out the most efficient way you're going to get work done in that time box, whether you call it a release or a PI. When we talk about how capacity planning works, we talk about it in a couple of different ways. Really what we're doing is we're modeling our work to the capacity. We're looking at the supply, we're looking at the demand, and we're looking at the time frame, and we're making decisions based on what we believe we can get done. This can be for a given release or releases or given PI or PIs. And again, they validate those what-if scenarios that we can come up with. What if a team is this burden for this release? What if for this release you have 2 teams or 3 teams that can get the work done? What if you only have 1? The earlier you have those conversations, the earlier you have the knowledge, so you can make sure that you remove the impediments to get the job done. The 3 words on the bottom are very important. You can put together a plan, you can share it with the stakeholders, and you can refine that plan based on the knowledge that you receive or that you get during your release or PI. When we look at this in the demo, we'll see that all users can view published plans, but there's a certain role called a planner, and only planners can create, delete, or publish, or look at unpublished plans. So how does this look in Agile Central? For those of you that use Agile Central, this is probably not unfamiliar to you, but you can see here on the left, you can select the work for your teams and make sure that you add it to your capacity plan. So you will select the items here that you're going to be using for your capacity plan. You can also choose the teams for your plan and specify their capacity. So what we mean by that is that you would select the teams that you're going to be modeling information for. You would put in their capacity, and this capacity is going to be based on the criteria that you specify for how much work you think they can get done during a release. Whether that's 100 points, whether that's 50 points, you would decide what your capacity is, and then from there you can have that information so then you can put together your what-if scenarios. This, of course, would be called the demand. So you have the supply on the left side, which is the work. You have the teams that are going to do the work. And then from there, you will, on the top of the screen, select a start and an end release. It can be, of course, the same release. It can be a further out release. You get to decide. What you can also do is specify different portfolio item types for your capacity plan. It's very important to understand that stories and defects are not considered portfolio items. There's another construct in Agile Central that deals with that. That's around team planning. But in terms of things such as features or epics or themes, you can specify what that portfolio item type is in Agile Central, and then you can use that to build your capacity plan. We've covered supply, we've covered demand, we've covered time box. Once you have those things put together in your capacity plan, assigning work to a team is as easy as dragging and dropping information. And you will see that during our brief demo. It's as easy as grabbing one of the features in this example and dragging it over to one of the teams in your plan. When you do that, what you will see is on the supply side, your feature or your portfolio item will go from white to gray. You can also, and we'll go over this in the demo as well, sort your supply. You can sort the things that you put in your priority in your capacity plan in terms of work to make sure that you establish your prioritization of the items that you want to add to your capacity plan. The other thing that you will notice as you start to put together your capacity plan is a blue bar, and that bar is called the Cutlines. Really what Cutlines do is they help you facilitate conversations. Because in the essence of things, what is above the cut line in a capacity plan is what will go in your release, and what is below the cut line is what will not go in your release. And so why this is critical is because what you need to do is to have conversations with your stakeholders, with management, and make sure that you understand why something is going in release and why something is not going in release. What Agile Central does is, if you see here, and you'll see in the demo, there are estimates, and based on either the preliminary estimates or the refined estimates, it will map that to capacity and let you know how much capacity you have left for a team to get the work done. So not only can you understand what is going to go in a release, but you can also understand how much work your teams are doing and how much capacity they have left. And you can see here whether it's under capacity or over capacity. So I've talked now for a few minutes about why this is so important. But the key thing here is that this allows you to create different what-if scenarios. You can model backlogs for release, and you can see what work is going to get done, what work isn't going to get done. And of course, you can see here how much capacity is used and how much capacity is still left. This is very, very important. Before, you would have to do a lot of work in order to make sure that you understood what you were working on. The key takeaway here is that now you can get together, you can plan out different things, you can have those conversations even before you get to your big room planning, right? You want to have as much information as you can to plan the work as early as you can and make sure that you have as much knowledge as you can so you can plan most effectively. So now that we've gone through just a brief introduction and discussion around capacity planning, there's a little more here. Because after you have those conversations, what you want to be able to do is you want to make sure that everyone can see your plan. They can review it and they can give you feedback. So after your planners, after your management has done their due diligence, you can publish this plan and you can make sure that everybody can see it. Visibility is key because visibility leads to discussion, not always great discussion, but discussion and collaboration and refinement. And refinement is what you want. You want to keep everybody in the loop and make sure that they know what they're working on and why. So there's a summary that you can do. You can also publish your capacity plan. You can update the fields in your release, and you can see here that it will either modify it or not. But that way, everybody can see the plan. It can be discussed. It can be refined. It can be improved. However, there's a bit more. Every time you have a plan and you think that that's a great plan, you start to work on that plan and things happen. Change happens because change is constant. Things get added, things get removed, things get elongated, things get pushed. So after you create this plan, you want to make sure that you can track changes to the plan. And we'll go over that a little bit as well. Again, as I have talked about, you want to make sure that you understand the progress of your capacity plan. What's been added? What's been removed? What's been completed? What's been finished? That really lends itself to a snapshot of what you got done, and also how much time has gone by since you published the plan. And this is important. There's a snapshot that's taken when you publish a plan, and it goes from that baseline and it tracks the changes to that published plan. So what does that look like? That lets you focus on anything that's been added to your plan, anything that's been removed from your plan, and of course what's been completed, and it does that all on one screen. There are those of you, of course, who will want to see things in terms of a graphical format, and we have that as well in terms of tracking the progress of your plan, in terms of what was your baseline, what was work in progress, what was added, what was finished, and what was removed. So you get an at-a-glance picture of all the changes to your capacity plan. So in terms of looking at it in terms of a timeline, you can say, this is what I want my plan to be, this is what I communicated my plan to be, and this is how my plan has changed over time. So with that, what I'm actually going to do is now switch over to Agile Central itself. As you can see here, this is Agile Central. I'm looking at it in terms of personalized navigation, so I have various pages pinned, but I am, of course, going to focus on capacity planning. For the purposes of this demo, I am going to load in a particular plan that I have been using for a little while just to show you the particulars of capacity planning. And as you can see, I've closed the sidebar to give myself as much real estate as possible. What you can see here on the left is you can see the different portfolio items. Just refresh this real quick. So these are all the portfolio items that I have added to my capacity plan. I can edit items, I can select items that I want to add. So no matter what, I'm pulling this directly from my portfolio items and I'm putting this in my capacity plan. As I mentioned before, I can drag and drop, which means I can reorder and prioritize the listing of the supply. If I want to, what I can do if I click on the gear here is, let's say that I want to edit a particular portfolio item in my capacity plan, I can do that using the quick detail page, so I'm not leaving the context of the capacity plan. But what I can also do is I can allocate work to different teams. So let's say something is really big, I can search on a team, I can add that information, and then I can put in an estimate of the things that, how much work I think a specific team can do. One of the other things I can do is then add specific teams to the capacity plan. So even though I have a whole list of teams in my capacity plan, I can add more teams if I need to. And you can see here that each of these teams has a capacity for this release, and then from that, I can look at what features these are mapped to. So you can see, because I've mapped these features, they're gray. And you can see that I have a specific percentage based on the capacity for this team and this release. If I were then to take this feature and drag it over, assuming it'll actually work in my demo. Hold on. Let's try this again. There we go. The power of the internet is good. So now you can see that my capacity has changed. I can see that I'm at 80% capacity for this team for this release. Now we want to be careful because it's really easy to say, okay, great, I want to go over 100. I could pull something else in here and I could make it over 100, and as soon as I do that, it turns red. That means I'm over 100% capacity. So probably what I want to do is just take one of these and remove it, and it goes back down to 80%. The other thing that's important to understand is you will see different colors here. Each of these features are color-coded, which gives me an idea of what initiatives they roll up to. One of the things we really want to watch out for is what we call context switching. Because if you're switching from different initiatives, you're moving your resources from focusing on one thing to another. And so generally more colors in a capacity plan is bad, and less colors are good. And that just gives you an idea of how much work you're doing that's based on which initiatives. And again, this all facilitates conversations. The thing I haven't talked about so far is I haven't talked about the fact that you can specify, of course, a starting release and an ending release, as well as your portfolio item type. So again, the supply, the demand, and the time frame. The other thing I did not mention so far is this cut line. So as you can see, just like I can move the different features, I can move the cut line up and down. And when I do that, and now what I've done is I've hit the arrows here so you can see this, I'm at 45% capacity in terms of my preliminary estimate. If I put in a refined estimate, capacity planning will update based on that refined estimate. So it starts with the preliminary estimate and it goes to a refined estimate. Now typically when you're doing what if scenarios, you're in various stages of estimation. So we see a lot of people using preliminary estimates, and we also do see some people using refined estimates. And you can see here that not only do you have the name of the feature or the portfolio item, you have its parent, you have any dependencies it maps to, and any roll-up that's under it. So really what you're doing is that in one place, you are able to build this out and make sure that not only do you understand how much supply you have, how much demand you have for your release or PI, you also have an understanding, like I mentioned before, of how the work is getting done. Those conversations that you're going to have, those things that you need to talk about in order to make sure you are clear on, or you're as clear as you can be on, can be discussed. When you're done, you can look at a summary. This is everything that I have gone through before. So again, in terms of the portfolio items, the information about the portfolio items, the teams that they're assigned to, the cut line, even around the count and the refined estimate total if you had put that in there. This, of course, can be exported as well. And then, if I were a planner, in terms of this demo, I am a planner, I could publish this, and then I could make sure it'll map to the fields in terms of the release, the plan date, the plan start date, the plan end date, or I can even publish it without updating any of the fields. So at this point, I've spent a little bit of time talking about capacity planning, and now I want to shift over to talking a little bit about plan progression. I've also pinned plan progression, so in my personalized navigation, I can get to it very quickly. And now what I want to do is that plan that I've been working on, I've created I published it, it's out there, and now I want to see how things have been working since I created that capacity plan. Now this is a demo, so you can see by the date this release is long completed. However, I can see how much work that has been done, as well as how much time has elapsed. So I didn't get everything done, but I certainly passed the release or PI, that's over. But now what I can do is I can take a look at what was in my plan. All those things I added back when I published this plan. What information did I add to the plan? What new features did I add? What was removed over the life cycle since I published this plan and it's been worked on? And what's been completed? Also, as I mentioned before, there's a scope chart, so you can see here a variety of things, such as the baseline of the work that was added, the work added since that baseline, the work that was planned at the baseline, the work that I added, what was in progress, what was completed, and what was removed. So again, you're getting this not only in quick format, but you're also getting it in terms of a scope chart that shows you across the life of your program increment or your release what happened. This can be downloaded or printed as well. So really, one of the things I would like to do is to talk about some conclusions. Hold on one second. Make sure that I can get this back up. There we go. We always like to talk about tips and tricks and things that you should think about as you look at capacity planning and plan progression. These are things that, of course, we have seen at customer sites and things that we have talked to customers about, and we feel it's important to share with you. Probably first and foremost, and we have seen this a lot at customers, is a tendency to plan everyone for every single bit of work that they can do. Hence, optimize, not maximize, because if you overschedule people too much, that is it gives them no wiggle room if you have changes to scope, if you have break-ins, if you have things that are added or emergency things that need to happen. But it's also not sustainable, right? You want to make sure that you understand how much your teams can do, look at what they've done over releases, and refine their capacity as you know more information. As you understand how your teams work, that's going to not only help you as you set an initial capacity, but also help you as you set future capacities for different releases. One of the things that may happen is that, maybe for 2 releases you have a full team and for the 3rd you don't due to vacations. Maybe you know that a certain team only has a little bit of time to work on a release because they're on a special project. There are different things here that you can understand. You'll understand as your teams work with each other and you get the feedback that you need and you improve how you do work, and that's going to lead you to optimizing how they do work via capacity planning as opposed to overscheduling them release after release after release. The second point is one I cannot emphasize enough. You need to have conversations with your stakeholders. You need to make sure that you give your teams and your management the data that they need, the information that they need to make good decisions and get everyone involved. It's not a throw over the wall equation. It's a get everybody together and collaborate with your teams so that they understand what's going on and why. It's really easy to say, no, I won't do the work if it's thrown over the wall than it is to say, look, I understand that you're working on this, but here are the new priorities and here's the thing that it's going to represent. Here's how it maps back to one of our key initiatives for this release or for these next 2 releases. So you want to get everybody involved. You want to get everybody visibility so that they understand what's going on, and then they can use that to plan their work accordingly, or even you as management can plan their work accordingly. Since I said the word accordingly 3 times, I will go to my 3rd bullet, which really boils down to prioritization. Now, if you've used Agile Central at all, you will understand that in portfolio items, you can rank your portfolio items. And something that you may not have noticed is that as you're filling in work into your capacity plan, it will keep that ranking that you see in portfolio items, but you can further rank items once you have specified them in your capacity plan. And you want to do that because as you begin to have these discussions, you're going to learn different things about the supply. You're going to learn different things about the work, and you want to make sure that with that updated knowledge, you can rank and re-rank things appropriately, estimate them properly, and then make sure they're put into your capacity plan and you understand if your teams can get the work done or not. Do not hesitate to share information. Publish your plans. Even if you publish them without date, it's better than you not publishing them. Right? If you have a team that can see a published plan or a PO that can see a published plan and they can facilitate a conversation ahead of big room planning, so that's a risk that you maybe can mitigate before you even get to big room planning. That's a win because it makes you more efficient to focus on the things that are going to come up during big room planning. So don't be afraid to share the information. Don't be afraid to distribute it and get that feedback that you need. We want to institute fast feedback loops throughout our usage of Agile, and as we scale Agile, we want to make sure that we're able to get information, get fast feedback, pivot, and move forward. Finally, one of the things that we always want to make sure, and this is more around culture than anything else, but don't fear the changes. Don't, yes, I'm talking about capacity planning and plan progression, and there's going to be changes there, and some of those are not going to be liked, or some of those are going to be liked depending on if you get to your work in a release or not. But really the thing is that all of this information, all of this visibility, all of this collaboration is helping change your culture into one of agility and helping you lose the fear of change. I'm sure you've probably seen that a ton of times, but we want to make sure that, you have that knowledge so you understand not only what's happening today, but what may happen tomorrow. And really from there, focus on being able to be nimble in the face of that change, because no matter what you're planning today will change for tomorrow. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our moderators and see some of your questions. And like I said before, hopefully I can answer some of them, but if not, I will definitely be getting back in touch with you to talk about the answers to your questions. One of the other things I want to do before we switch over, one of the things I didn't do before is illustrate a couple of things that are very important. There is a feedback button that we encourage you to use to give your feedback, but more importantly, there are help buttons. These are context-sensitive help buttons, so you can learn more about capacity planning. you know, the information I got from this webinar, I certainly got from the help as well as how customers use it. But what we want to make sure is no matter what, you leverage help in order to make sure you have a better understanding of how to use these two topic areas I've just covered. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our moderators.
Thanks, Rusty. That was great. So while we're waiting for a few more moments while folks ask their last-minute questions, I would just like to share some great resources we have so you can keep in touch with us for updates and more. We're offering a few Agile Academy courses online at any time and also in person during September and October. Go ahead and visit agileacademy.ca.com for details and registration. For those of you who haven't already, please join our Agile Central community. The URL is listed here, and I always find it helpful to bookmark it. We have a monthly customer newsletter sharing product updates, upcoming events, learning and education opportunities, and so much more. You can subscribe to this monthly newsletter by finding the CA Agile Central newsletter section and clicking the subscribe button directly below it. And since you are with me now, you know about the monthly community webcast series. To RSVP to upcoming webcasts, find the webcast button at the top of the community page and go ahead and click RSVP. So now I'm going to hand it back over to Rusty, and you can go ahead and answer some of these questions with the remaining time that we have left.
Yeah, I see a couple of the questions revolve around capacity and capacity points and feature points. In terms of capacity planning, we are talking about feature points, but that is really arbitrary. You can specify, you know, for this feature or for these features, I have this many points in order to, or this many points as a capacity for my team. You will have to decide what you want that to be defined as. I also see another question that says, what does the L estimate come from? Really what we're looking at is that in terms of preliminary estimates, we're using what we would call T-shirt sizing, extra small, small, medium, large. You will have to specify how many, you know, points that means. And so, yes, it's arbitrary, but the reason why it's arbitrary is because different organizations have different definitions for points. So a small may mean one thing to one company and may mean another thing to another company. And so that's why we left it to be arbitrary. I also have a question about colors on features. Colors are not necessarily customizable, but what you may also be seeing is my screen. My screen looks a little different, but you'll have the grays, the blues, the yellows, the greens, the reds, the pinks, the orange. So those are the colors that are there in terms of features. I think the final question that I see here in terms of, there are two other questions. There's one on plan progression demo, which says, you see the completed feature is 4 and the total features are 22. What does that mean? The total features, when you publish a capacity plan, it takes that baseline, and those are the features that it means when it says 22. The completed ones are the features that have totally been completed. So their definition of done, all the tasks and stories under those features have been completed. So that's what it means. In terms of that published capacity plan, only 4 of the features were actually completed out of the 22 that were assigned when it was published. The final question that I have is, there's a bunch more. So I see that Terry Ginsburg is asking a ton of questions about, have you considered having the publish, populate the release on the child user stories as well, setting the preliminary estimates for each specific portfolio level. So I would encourage you to hit the feedback button and give that feedback to our development teams. And I'll take 2 more questions. I'm just reading through these. I think I answered the is the story points. No, these are feature points, and that, of course, is arbitrary. You would have to specify the points and the value of the points. There's a question also around how far can we create a capacity plan for what would be your advice. So we look at, in terms of what I have seen, we look at things in terms of releases or PIs. You're generally looking to be 1 to 2 releases forward because you can't really estimate much more than that. I think safe is 1.5 to 2. Please don't quote me on that. You probably could look it up in the time that I'm talking. But you really only want to look out a couple of PIs ahead, because the further you get out, the less reliable the information is, right? Like I mentioned before, you want to use this to prep for big room planning, so definitely a release before would be advisable. And I would say once you get past that 1.5 releases or PIs out, then you have to be really careful. What you may want to do, though, is look at it in terms of, maybe that you're going to have a feature or a set of features way out, but you still need to be careful because, as you know, in development of any type, things can change very quickly. Okay. So the last question that I'll look at, because I think we're starting to repeat questions, is that if multiple teams are participating on a feature, how important is it that what a point means is the same across teams? I think that's critical, right? You have to make sure that you have consistency. You have to make sure that you're talking about things in the same scale is probably not the right word, but in the same definition, or you're using very similar terminology, because what 5 points you need to make sure that what 5 points means to one team is 5 points means to other teams, right? So I would encourage you to standardize across your teams on, what your T-shirt sizes mean, what's a point, how do you derive that, and then you can use that to kind of level set across all your teams as you move forward. One of the other things I'll say before I turn it over as well is, again, the help will cover some of this as well, so I encourage you to look at the help. That'll help hopefully answer some of your questions. And I think that's it. I think other than that, the questions have been repeated. So I'll stop there.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rusty, for teaching us all about capacity planning capabilities found within Agile Central. And also, thank you to everyone who joined the community webcast today. Be on the lookout for the next webcast. Thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.